Ugh, all of these tools and supplies are stressing me out. I can't deal with the pressure. Hold on. This is all done and over with. Now all I have to do is relax, sip my spicy tea, and chat. No problem. Hi, I'm Irene, and right off the bat, I'm going to apologize for a whole minute's worth of blurry footage. I kept it in because I don't want anyone going to the comments saying, "I don't believe you drew that." Plus, I might have wanted you all to have just a little taste of what it's like when a vision-impaired senior loses her glasses and her butterfly sketch ends up looking a lot like a chubby fairy. Don't worry, the glasses were found, but that doesn't change the fact I don't know how to operate this camera. That is Strathmore 500 cold-pressed watercolor paper. Well, the back side. I think it's the back side. It's the side with less texture, anyway. I didn't want to deal with that uniform surface that looks like a woven rug. Full disclosure, I'm only 55, but I think I can refer to myself as a senior. I mean, I qualify for some of those sweet senior perks, because there are quite a few stores, restaurants, and services that offer senior discounts for those who are 55. Even Carnival Cruise Line. Never mind that Carnival might have the youngest cruising demographic. I'll just pack an extra suitcase for my swimsuit, complete with bloomers, poofy sleeves, modesty stockings, and a bathing cap. Sure, people would stare, but honestly, I wouldn't care after the third Mai Tai. One of my brothers did some Temu shopping and got me a backstabbed Julius Caesar brush holder. Et tu, Princeton. Yes, I chose several Aqua Elite brushes for this project. Those shown, plus a modeler. Aqua Elites are made with synthetic Kolinsky sable and are some of my favorite brushes. My advice, stay on their good side. The paints are the Autumn set of Vinci Watercolors. I only recently acquired those tubes, so the pans you see there had only been curing for a few days. The colors are Benzamita Orange Deep, Gold Ochre, Carmine, Mauve, Prussian Blue Green shade, and Perylene Green. I had this image in my mind of multicolored horizontal strokes for the background. What could go wrong? So I started with that, and it looked okay, but it sure didn't scream autumn to me. I mean, I get that Da Vinci might have been thinking about mixability. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. They could have called it summer, and I would have said, yeah, that looks like summer to me. Last year, I put together my Fall Feels watercolor palette. That was pretty much everything I wanted from a September through November color assortment. To be fair, this is still a fine grouping of colors. Individually, they're really lovely, bright, and intense. They just weren't ringing my autumnal bells. Look at it. Those are ice cream colors. For the fairy wings, I adapted a technique I saw elsewhere. Marami on the YouTube channel, Marami Simplecraft. Actually, I believe she has another channel, but that is the one where I saw her create beautiful watercolor flowers using a multi-dot process. Seriously, if you haven't seen them, please check out her videos. A link is in the description. Well, for my purposes, I eschewed the dot process and instead used a multicolored dab technique. I did the painting this way because I wanted the wings to appear delicate, fragile, random, and organic, and not necessarily accurate or realistic. Now I'm going to tell you about the delicious breakfast I had. First thing this morning, I pulled out some frozen croissants. You know, the Costco ones. There are like a dozen in the package, so we freeze them, several to a baggie, and pull them out as needed. Then I fried up some pork sausage links. They're Falls brand and come in a big pack, and we like the flavor. They also get portioned into small baggies and popped in the freezer. All I have to do is remember to put one in the fridge the day before so it can defrost. So, one frying pan for sausage links and another pan for scrambling eggs with seasoned salt and grated cheese. The croissants get warmed up in the combination air fryer/toaster oven. Once everything was plated up, I assembled the components into a sandwich. Producer Mike had his deconstructed. Mine was delicious, and I assume his was too. Why am I talking about this? Because I can't stop thinking about it. We're both foodies, so thinking about and talking about food is a big part of our lives. Also, we love a good hot breakfast. Producer Mike leaves early in the morning for his job, and on his days off, one or both of us ends up sleeping in. Or if we're both up early, it's a case of somebody having forgotten to defrost the sausage. Hey, it happens. Growing up, I thought pulling ground beef from the freezer, tossing it in a hot pan, and scorching half of it was how it was supposed to be done. Just like adding a jar of ragu sauce and a packet of spaghetti seasoning and half a bottle of ketchup was how it was supposed to be done. Don't get me wrong, Mom had a number of great meals in rotation, but her version of spaghetti was not one of them. Okay, enough about food. For now, anyway. So last week was a major undertaking. Well, I tidied the studio, and if you saw the previous video showing the results, it may interest you to know that the last bits are now done. The pile of junk was cleared away. The old paper cutter that must weigh a good 10 pounds is now on the dresser, and I even further organized the computer station. Things are so tidy right now that it makes me sick, because I know this state will only last for a few weeks at most. The paper cutter is a bit of a relic, and it's so heavy because it's made of wood and metal. The blade itself looks like a machete. I don't handle it much because I actually fear dismemberment, but it's the kind of item that makes a statement. Like, compliment my art or else. It's actually from producer Mike's previous life as a professional photographer. If I remember, I'll post a picture of the paper cutter on the community tab. The number 10 round brush was used sparingly, pretty much only to add pale color to the body and hair. Since I planned to add shading and line work, I wasn't too concerned about precision at that point. With a Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pen in sepia, I added inky lines. Initially, it was a fine liner, a 0.3, I think. But when it came to the wings, I switched to the brush tip. I love the brush tips. Although I only have the Pitt brush pens in sepia and black, I'd love to get some more colors. Gray, in particular, would be a versatile shade to have. One thing I like about the Pitt pens is that they're waterproof. That's a nice feature because it means you can add watercolors over your line work. Ink and wash as opposed to wash and ink. There are a couple of artists who are strongly associated with fairies. One is Brian Froud, and I'll talk about him later in this video. The other is Arthur Rackham. He was an illustrator who was most prolific during the early 1900s. His work was included in a number of published fairy tale volumes. He even illustrated an edition of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. That play features several fairy characters, including the King and Queen of Fairyland and Robin Goodfellow. There's a lot to like about that story, but I just can't get over what a bastard Oberon was to Titania. On the flip side, I adore Mendelssohn's Midsummer Night's Dream music pieces from the 1800s. I wasn't able to finish reading a single Shakespeare tragedy, but his comedies are delightful. Or at least I found them so in my 20s. For a long time, I thought As You Like It was my favorite Shakespeare comedy, until I watched the movie version of Much Ado About Nothing from 1993. Wait, Claudio was awful to Hero, so never mind. The Taming of the Shrew, that's the best. Oh, ugh, Petruchio. Man, Shakespeare's plays are full of jerks. You might have noticed the Aqua Elite dagger brush in play. I really had fun using it. Sure, a round brush would have worked too, but that dagger has such a great point, and the hairs have a little bit of springiness, more so than the Neptune dagger. Anyway, I don't know if you can tell, but I didn't want to stop playing with it. The dagger brush did a good job of adding shape and shadows to the body, also giving the hair a wild and flowy appearance. Let's touch on nudity for a bit. A while back, I sketched a couple of human figures using an Andrew Loomis reference book. Well, the thumbnail for that video raised flags and YouTube wouldn't allow it. So I slapped several black bars on the thumbnail and it was good to go. Live and learn, right? So that's what I'll do for this video as well. I get it. You don't want to flash that stuff in front of everyone, because people have differing comfort levels. My idea of tasteful might be someone else's idea of vulgar. All I'm saying is the "it's art, so it's okay" defense only goes so far. Things are a tad more complicated now that this channel is monetized, because the uploading process involves a self-flagging step. Sounds weird, right? Believe me, it feels weird too. Every time I upload a new video, I have to fill out a questionable content form. Does this video contain profanity? Is there nudity? Are there any controversial topics? Look, I'm not an expert, but I believe that determines which advertisers will allow their ads on your video. So content like that can potentially limit your ad revenue. As for self-flagging, I've only had to do it once, on the video where I said a bad word twice in the first 10 seconds. Hey, I never claimed to be an angel. I'd originally intended to use only the fine liner, but I'm so glad that I changed my mind and switched to the brush tip. I dig the line variation in its strokes, not as much as when using an actual brush, of course. In hindsight, I totally could have used a detail brush with some walnut ink. Then again, these days, I don't trust my brush control enough for that type of work. I find that using a brush-tipped pen allows me to be more spontaneous. When using a brush and ink, I tend to work slower and each stroke is intentional, whereas with the brush pen, I'm more loosey-goosey. The .3 fine liner did return later for some small details and fine wispy strokes. It's no Brian Froud, but it'll do for the Inkworks studio. If you aren't familiar with Brian Froud, he gained fame in the 1970s with his art book, Fairies. There were subsequent sequels, but he's probably best known to younger fans for his design work on the 1980s fantasy films Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. In the 90s, he began a successful art book series revolving around fictional Lady Coddington and her fairy encounters. The volume I have is Lady Coddington's Fairy Album. It's a hardbound edition that was gifted to me many years ago. I would say the series is not for young children, though, as it contains nudity and a fair amount of twisted humor. Then again, as a child of the 70s, I was exposed to some things that might be considered questionable. On television, no less. I recall my mom covering my eyes during more than one late-night movie scene. That was before I learned to wait until she was asleep before sneaking back to the family room at 1 a.m. Good times. The point is, look at how well-balanced I turned out. Do you remember earlier in this video when I'd complained about how these Da Vinci colors were too bright for autumn? Oh, the irony. Because with a good amount of haphazard mixing, the colors actually turned out rather muted. So this is me eating my words. I mean, this painting could absolutely fit in my collection of fall-time works. Well, without the pink and blue pattern background. Ugh, I knew I'd regret that. It's a far cry from Pinocchio's Blue Fairy, Peter Pan's Tinkerbell, and Sleeping Beauty's Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, if only for the lack of clothing. I'm happy to share this with you, and thanks for watching. With respect to Rackham, Froude, and Disney, my painting is closer to what I imagine fairies might actually look like. And that's a good enough reason for me to see this project as an art success. Until next time, stay flittery, my friends.